This story is titled, My Daughter Called Me a Loser After My Wife Cheated on Me. Now they're both begging at my door. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. So I, 54 male, never thought I'd be posting something like this on Reddit, but after everything that's happened over the past few years, I just need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it all down will help me process it or something. Maybe some of you guys have been through similar shit and can relate. I don't know. 8 years ago, my life was what most people would probably call pretty damn good. I was 46, married to this woman, I'll call her Lex, 43 female at the time, for almost 22 years. And we had a daughter, V, 19 female back then. We lived in a nice 4-bedroom house in one of those neighborhoods where people actually take care of their lawns and wave to each other and stuff. You know, the American dream or whatever. I had a solid job at a management consulting firm, not one of the big names like McKinsey, but still respectable. Made good money, around $120,000 plus bonuses. We had 2 cars, nothing too fancy, just a Lexus for me, company perk, and Lex had a Honda CR-V that was pretty new. We took vacations most years, usually to Florida or sometimes Mexico if we were feeling adventurous. V had her own car that we bought her when she graduated high school. Just a used Toyota, but it was reliable. Lex was working part-time at this fancy boutique downtown because she needed something to do, but honestly, didn't really need the money. She liked the employee discount more than anything. The job fit her schedule perfectly. She could go to her yoga classes 3 times a week and still have time for lunch with her friends. Looking back, I was basically bankrolling her lifestyle, but I didn't mind because I thought we were happy. V had just started her freshman year at State, only about 30 minutes from our house. She was living in the dorms because she wanted the college experience, but came home most weekends to do laundry and raid our fridge. Smart kid, always did well in school. She was studying marketing or communications or something like that. One of those degrees that could lead to all kinds of jobs. I remember being proud that she knew what she wanted. Family dinners were still a thing at our house. We'd sit around the table most nights, talking about our days. Lex would complain about difficult customers at the boutique. V would tell us about her classes or her roommate drama. I'd share funny stories about clients, without naming names, obviously. We laughed a lot back then. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have what so many guys I knew didn't. A stable home, financial security, and a family that actually seemed to enjoy being together. I don't know what I'd do without you two, I used to tell them while we were eating dinner or watching a movie together. Lex would smile and reach across the table to squeeze my hand. V would roll her eyes but smile anyway. Dad, you're so cheesy, she'd say. But I could tell she appreciated it. She'd give me one of those side hugs teenagers do when they're too cool to show real affection, but still want to. Our house was always the place where V's friends wanted to hang out in high school. Lex would make snacks, and I'd fire up the grill on weekends. We had a finished basement with a big TV and a pool table I bought secondhand, but refinished myself. I was the cool dad who'd joke around with the kids, but also made sure nobody got into real trouble. Money wasn't really something I worried about back then. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I had a decent 401k, some stock options from work, and we were about 10 years away from paying off the mortgage. I figured I'd work until 65, then Lex and I would downsize, maybe move somewhere warmer, and enjoy retirement. Honestly, the biggest problems in my life then were things like needing to repair the deck, or whether we should remodel the master bathroom, or if I should finally cave and get the boat I'd been eyeing for years. First world problems, right? Lex and I weren't perfect by any means. We had our arguments like any couple, usually about small stuff like me working late, or her spending too much on clothes, or us disagreeing about whether V should get another tattoo. I was fine with it, Lex wasn't. But the big stuff? We were aligned, or so I thought. I honestly thought we'd grow old together. I had this vision of us sitting on rocking chairs on some porch somewhere, gray-haired but still holding hands, watching grandkids play in the yard. Standard dream, I know, but it was mine. Then, the recession hit. Not the 2008 one. We weathered that okay. But a smaller industry-specific one that hit consulting firms hard. Clients started cutting back, projects got canceled, and my company started laying people off. I wasn't worried at first. I'd been there for 15 years, had brought in several big clients, and thought I was pretty much indispensable. I'd survived previous rounds of layoffs, and even had to be the one delivering the bad news to some of my team members. It sucked,
but I figured my position was secure. I remember joking to Lex, "They can't fire me. I know where all the bodies are buried." She laughed and asked if we should cancel our planned vacation to Cancun that summer, just to be safe. I told her no way. We deserved it and could afford it. Man, I was fucking clueless about what was coming. I still remember that day perfectly.
It was a Wednesday. Always felt like bad news comes on Thursdays for some reason. I was working on a presentation when my boss, Greg, messaged me asking if I could stop by his office when I had a minute. I figured it was about the Johnson account or something. When I walked in, HR was sitting there. That's when I knew. "We're restructuring the department," Greg said, not even looking me in the eyes like the coward he was. "Your position is being eliminated." Eliminated. Like I was some kind of bug. 15 fucking years at that company, countless weekends worked, all the times I'd chosen the job over family events, and that's what I got. Eliminated. They gave me the usual corporate bullshit speech about how valuable my contributions had been, how it wasn't personal, just business, blah blah blah. I barely heard it. They handed me a folder with severance information, 6 months' pay, which sounded decent until you realized what the job market was like, and said someone from HR would walk me to clean out my desk, like I was gonna steal shit or something. The worst part was walking past my team with a cardboard box of my stuff. The looks on their faces. Some were shocked, some scared, probably thinking they were next, and some, I hate to say it, looked kind of relieved it was me and not them. Human nature, I guess. I drove home in a daze. It was like 2 p.m. on a workday, and I was heading home with a box of desk crap in my trunk. Didn't feel real. Lex was out shopping with her friends when I got home, so I had a few hours to sit at the kitchen table and try to process what the hell had just happened. When Lex got home and saw me sitting there, she knew something was wrong right away. "Why are you home so early?" she asked, putting her shopping bags down. 3 bags from Nordstrom. Probably spent at least $500, which I didn't realize at the time would matter so much soon. "I got laid off," I said flatly. Her face did this thing where it cycled through like 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, sympathy, worry, and then something else I couldn't quite identify. Maybe fear? "What? Why? How could they?" she said, sitting down across from me. I explained what little I knew. Restructuring, budget cuts, last in, first out. Except I wasn't last in. I was just expensive. Younger guys could do my job for less money. "What are we going to do?" she asked, and I noticed the "we" seemed to mean you based on her tone. "I'll find another job," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "The severance gives us some time. We'll be okay." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. The first month wasn't too bad. I treated the job search like a job itself. Up at 7, showered and dressed like I was going to work, then spent 8 hours at the kitchen table applying for positions, networking, calling old contacts. I had a LinkedIn profile but never really used it before, so I had to learn all that stuff. Felt weird asking for endorsements and recommendations, but I did it. Lex was supportive at first, bringing me coffee, telling me I'd find something soon, that any company would be lucky to have me. But as the weeks dragged on with no offers, just a few interviews that went nowhere, her attitude started to change. It was small things at first. She'd mention a friend's husband who got laid off and found a new job within 2 weeks. She'd sigh loudly when checking the mail and finding more bills. She started forgetting to tell me about dinner invitations from our couple friends. I think she was embarrassed to have an unemployed husband. By month 3, our savings were taking a hit. I canceled all my subscriptions, we cut cable, stopped eating out. I started doing all the cooking and cleaning since I was home anyway, but instead of appreciating it, Lex just seemed to resent that I was always around. "Don't you have somewhere to go today?" she'd ask, like I was a teenager loafing on the couch. I was applying for jobs every damn day. The real sting was when V needed money for some college expenses we hadn't planned for. An extra textbook, a lab fee, something like that. It was only like $200. But when I had to tell her we needed to be careful with money right now, Lex lost it. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she yelled after V had hung up. "We can't even support our own daughter now." "It's temporary," I said, trying to stay calm. "We're not broke. We're just being cautious." "How long is temporary?" she demanded. "It's been over 3 months, Ray. What jobs have you even applied for today?" And that became our new normal. She'd check on me like I was a child, asking for reports on my job search, suggesting positions that were entry-level or completely outside my field, because at least it's something. One night, I caught her looking at our bank accounts with this worried expression. "We're fine," I told her, though the numbers were definitely going down. "The severance will last another few months, and I'll find something before then." She didn't respond, just closed the laptop and went to bed early. That's when her extra shifts at the boutique started. Suddenly, she was working late several nights a week, weekend shifts too. I was actually relieved. We needed the money, and it got her out of the house so I didn't have to deal with her constant disappointment. I should have known something was off. The boutique closed at 7 p.m., but she'd come home at 10 or 11. Her clothes and hair were always perfect, not like someone who'd been working retail for hours. And there was the cologne smell, not hers. I asked her about it once, and she got super defensive. Are you seriously accusing me of something? When I'm out there working to support us because you can't? That shut me up pretty quick. The guilt was overwhelming. Here I was, suspicious of my wife when she was picking up extra work because I'd failed as a provider. At least that's how I saw it then. By month 5, I was getting desperate. The severance was almost gone, and I'd had exactly 2 promising interviews that both ended with, "We've decided to go with another candidate." Turns out, 15 years at one company made me look stale to some employers, while being 46 made me too senior, read old, for others. I started applying for jobs I was overqualified for, willing to take a significant pay cut. Even those weren't panning out. The day I applied for a position driving a delivery van for a local shipping company was one of the lowest points. It paid less than half what I'd been making before. But we needed income, and driving a van was something I could do. When I got called for an interview and then offered the job the same day, I felt relieved that money would be coming in again, but also ashamed that after decades building a career, this was where I'd landed. I broke the news to Lex that night, thinking she'd at least be glad I'd found something. "A delivery driver? That's your solution?" she said, not even trying to hide her disgust. God, I can't believe what my life has become. That hurt. A lot. "What do you want me to do, Lex?" I shouted, finally losing my cool. "The bills need to be paid. Would you rather I turned it down and we lost the house? I'd rather you found something worthy of your experience. Did you even try calling Greg to see if they'd take you back? Or what about Tom from the golf club? His company is always hiring." We went back and forth like that until I just walked out of the room. No point arguing when someone's determined to be disappointed in you. I started the van job the next week. Early mornings, long hours, lots of driving and heavy lifting. My body wasn't used to it, and I'd come home exhausted, with back pain and sore feet. But it was honest work, and the guys I worked with were decent. Lex and I were fighting constantly by then. She'd make these little comments about the job, asking when I was going to find a real position again, complaining that I smelled like cardboard boxes and sweat when I got home. When I started bringing home my uniform to wash, she'd make a show of handling it like it was contaminated. V noticed the tension during her visits home. "You guys are fighting a lot," she observed one weekend. "Just stressed about money," I said, not wanting to dump adult problems on her. "Is it that bad?" she asked, looking worried. "We're managing," I assured her. "Don't worry about it. Focus on school." But things got a whole lot worse. One day I'd been driving the van for about a month, had a killer headache that wouldn't quit, so my supervisor let me go home early. Wasn't even noon yet. I pulled into our driveway and saw this black Mercedes parked there. Definitely not a car from our neighborhood. My first thought was maybe Lex had a customer from the boutique over or something. When I opened the front door, I heard laughter coming from upstairs. Lex and a man's voice. My stomach dropped. Found them in our bedroom, not doing anything but sitting on our bed with wine glasses. Way too comfortable with each other. The guy was tall, tan, wearing a watch that probably cost more than my car. Lex jumped up when she saw me, face turning red. "Ray, you're supposed to be at work." The guy stood up too, cool as could be, and held out his hand like we were at some business lunch. "Dom Walsh, pleasure to meet you." I ignored his hand. "Get out of my house." "Ray, don't be like this." Lex stepped between us. "Dom and I were just talking about investment opportunities. He thinks he can help us." "Help us?" I laughed. "Is that what they call it these days?" Dom smirked at me. "Your wife has excellent taste. In everything but husbands, apparently." I saw red. "Get outside now." After he left, Lex didn't even try to deny it. "What did you expect, Ray? You've given up." Dom has ambition, connections. He can give me the life you promised and failed to provide. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, she admitted, chin up like she was proud of it. "And he's asked me to move in with him. You want to leave? Fine. But don't expect to take half of what little we have left." Her laugh was cold. "Oh, trust me. I won't need anything from you ever again." She kept pushing, calling me a failure, saying how embarrassed she was to tell people what I did for a living now. I lost it when she got in my face and literally spit at me. Just reached out, grabbed her arm, and marched her to the door. "Get out and don't come back." She left that night with 3 suitcases and her jewelry. I sat in the kitchen alone, wondering how 22 years of marriage could end like that. The next day, I called V to tell her what happened before Lex could spin her own version. Mom did what? She exploded when I told her. She's been seeing someone, guy named Dom. She's moved in with him. I can't even. V sounded like she was crying. How could she do that to you? To us? Your mother made her choice, I said tiredly. It was the wrong one, V said fiercely. I'm on your side, Dad. That meant more to me than she could know. I figured Lex would try to turn V against me, use the college money as leverage. But my daughter surprised me. That weekend, V came home and helped me start sorting out the mess. Canceled Lex's credit cards, changed Netflix passwords, all that petty divorce stuff. But it felt good having V there, knowing she had my back. We don't need her, V would say when I seemed down. We're better off without someone who would bail when things got tough. I tried to be fair, told V that her mom still loved her, and this was between adults. But V wasn't having it. She betrayed our family, Dad. I'm not just going to pretend that's okay. For a few months after Lex left, it was just me and V figuring things out. I had to downsize fast. No way I could keep the house on my delivery driver salary. Found a small 2-bedroom rental in a decent enough neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had a roof and running water. V was amazing during this time. She'd come home from college most weekends and help me pack, clean, throw out junk. She never complained about the smaller place or having to give up some of her stuff. It's just things, Dad, she'd say, when I apologized for the 10th time about her having to cram into a tiny bedroom when she visited. We still have each other. Money was tight, but we managed. I worked long hours driving the van, and V picked up a part-time job at the campus library while finishing her sophomore year. She even offered to transfer to community college to save money, but I wouldn't let her. Your education is the one thing I won't compromise on, I told her. We'll make it work. We had this routine on weekends she was home. Cheap pizza on Friday nights, watching movies from the library on my old laptop. Saturday mornings we'd hit garage sales looking for stuff we needed. Found a decent couch for $50 that way. That summer, V spent hours helping me apply for better jobs. She'd sit at our wobbly kitchen table, editing my resume, searching job sites. Your experience is worth something, Dad, she'd insist. The right opportunity will come along. And weirdly enough, it did. This smaller consulting firm offered me a position, not as great as my old job, but better pay than driving and using my actual skills. I could afford a better apartment, maybe even save a little. A year passed after I divorced my ex and things were looking up, until Lex started calling V. At first, V would ignore her or hang up, but Lex was persistent. She's still my mom, V explained when I found her texting Lex one day. I'm just letting her know I'm okay. I didn't like it, but V was 20, an adult. Just be careful, I warned her. Your mother has a way of twisting things. I had no idea how right I was or how quickly everything would change. It started small. Lex inviting V for lunch. Then weekend visits. I didn't like it, but what could I say? Lex was still her mom. I noticed the changes in V gradually. She'd come back from visiting them with shopping bags from expensive stores. New phone, designer purse, gifts from Lex and Dom. She'd talk about their downtown condo, the view, their fancy dinner parties. Mom said they're going to St. Bart's next month, V mentioned one night over our frozen pizza. She showed me the resort. It looks amazing. I saw the look in her eyes. Our budget meals and secondhand furniture couldn't compete with the glamour Lex was flaunting. You know you can visit her whenever you want, I said, trying to be mature about it. I know, Dad, but something had changed. I could feel her slipping away a little more each time she came back from visiting them. There was this growing distance between us, like she was comparing our lives and finding mine lacking. I'd catch her looking around our small apartment with this expression I couldn't quite name at first, but eventually recognized as pity, maybe even embarrassment. It killed me inside. This was my daughter, the person who'd stood by me when everyone else left, and now she was looking at me like I was some kind of cautionary tale. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase, that the novelty of Dom's money would wear off, and she'd remember what really mattered. But deep down, I knew I was losing her to the lifestyle Lex and Dom were dangling in front of her. And the worst part? I couldn't compete with it. Not financially. All I could offer was love and stability, and apparently, that wasn't enough anymore. One day, V came home one weekend from what was supposed to be a girls' trip, paid for by Lex, of course, and couldn't look me in the eye. Dad, I need to talk to you, she said, fidgeting nervously. I've been thinking, maybe I should move in with Mom and Dom for a while. I froze, feeling like I've been slapped. Why? Her answer crushed me. Dom has connections in the industry I want to work in. He's offered to help me get internships. She hesitated. And honestly, Dad, it's kind of embarrassing bringing friends here. This place is so small, and the neighborhood is, you know, embarrassing? I repeated. V, I've been busting my ass to provide what I can. You're the only one who knows perfectly what I'm talking about. I know, but she looked around our small living room. Mom and Dom have a guest room bigger than this whole apartment, and they live in Harbor Towers. So that's it? You're choosing luxury over loyalty? Don't make me feel guilty for wanting nice things, she snapped. You're just like Mom says, stuck in a rut, comfortable with mediocrity. I looked at her. I had déjà vu. Those words, so similar to what Lex had said when she left, felt like a knife in my chest. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, if that's how you feel, maybe you should go. She moved out the next day. Dom sent a car to pick her up. Not just any car, but a black Lincoln with a driver in a suit. I watched from my window as the guy loaded her suitcases into the trunk, while V stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, checking her phone, not once looking up at my apartment. Just like that, I lost my daughter too. The silence after she left was deafening. I'd walk past her empty room and feel this physical ache in my chest. Some nights I'd sit on the couch with a beer, staring at the wall, wondering where I went wrong. Was I supposed to magically become rich? Should I have swallowed my pride and begged Lex to stay? The first few weeks were brutal. I'd catch myself making enough dinner for two, or seeing something funny and thinking I should tell V about that, before remembering she was gone. Thanksgiving came around, and I bought a frozen turkey dinner for one. Sat at my kitchen table alone while scrolling through Instagram photos of V, Lex, and Dom at some fancy restaurant, all dressed up and smiling like they were in a magazine ad for the perfect family. That night, I got drunk for the first time in years and woke up feeling like absolute garbage, both physically and emotionally. Rock bottom has a way of focusing you, though. I realized I couldn't keep living like this, drowning in self-pity and what-ifs. If V and Lex had moved on, maybe it was time I did too. I threw myself into work, put in extra hours, took on projects nobody wanted. Anything to keep busy and not think about how empty my apartment felt. The physical exhaustion helped me sleep at night, and the mental challenges kept my mind off my personal life during the day. It wasn't healthy, probably, but it was survival. The consulting gig was going well. Got promoted after 6 months and started putting money away again. I bought some new clothes, joined a gym, fixed up my apartment a bit, even began dating a little, awkward coffee meetups and dinner dates that mostly went nowhere. Nothing serious until I met Jen, a woman who lived in my building. We started talking in the laundry room one Saturday, the most ordinary beginning you could imagine. And something just clicked. She was genuine, kind, and didn't care that I drove a 10-year-old car. She'd been through her own hell losing her husband to cancer, and somehow still managed to see the good in life. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I could too. During this, I'd hear bits about Lex and V through mutual friends. V got that internship through Dom's connections. Lex was planning his company parties, basically playing trophy girlfriend. They seemed happy in their perfect little life. Then, about 2 years after V moved out, I got a hysterical call from Lex. "It's your fault!" she screamed when I answered. "You turned her against me. What are you talking about?" I asked, completely confused. Between sobs, the story came out. Lex had come home early from a spa weekend and found Dom and V together. In his bed, they'd been sneaking around for months. "He said he loves her," Lex wailed. "That she's young and exciting and I'm past my prime." The irony wasn't lost on me. Kinda like when you left me for him? This is different. She's my daughter. And I was your husband for over 20 years. She had the nerve to ask if she could stay with me until she figured things out. I actually laughed. "No, Lex. You made your bed with Dom. Now V is lying in it." "Ray, please," she begged. "I have nowhere else to go. He's throwing me out." I didn't think about Lex much after that call. Life went on. I focused on my job, spent time with Jen, tried to build something new from the ashes of my old life. But karma has a way of working in the background while you're busy living. 6 months later, I found out that Dom met a 21-year-old model and moved her in. V found herself out on the street, just like her mother. I didn't find this out from V directly. No, I found out because she showed up at my door one rainy night. I heard the knock around 11 p.m. and wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, mascara running down her face, designer clothes soaked through, holding that expensive suitcase Dom had probably bought her, something inside me just hardened. "Dad?" Her voice was small when I cracked the door open, like when she was a kid afraid of thunderstorms. "I know I don't deserve it, but can I stay? Just for a little while?" Part of me hesitated for a split second, but then I remembered her words. You're stuck in a rut, comfortable with mediocrity. I remembered how she'd looked around my apartment with disgust before she left. I remembered how she'd chosen luxury over loyalty, wealth over family. You're right. You don't deserve it, I said, and closed the door in her face. I stood there for a moment, listening to her crying on the other side. She knocked again, more desperately. Dad, please, I have nowhere to go. Try your mother, I said through the door. Or one of your fancy friends from Dom's world. They won't help me, she sobbed. Please, Dad. Not my problem, I replied, and walked away from the door. She kept knocking for another 10 minutes before finally giving up. I just sat on the couch, telling myself I'd done the right thing. She'd made her bed with Dom, betraying not just me but her own mother. Now she could lie in it. I found out what happened to her through Mark, a guy from my building who worked at a diner downtown. About a week after she showed up at my door, he mentioned seeing this girl who looked like she'd been through hell, applying for a waitressing job. Soaking wet, expensive clothes, but they were wrinkled like she'd been sleeping in them, he said. Manager took pity on her and hired her on the spot. When he described her, I knew it was V. Turns out she'd been sleeping in her car for days, showering at a gym where she'd bought a day pass. The diner job barely paid enough for her to rent a room in some sketchy shared house. I couldn't stop thinking about how Lex digged her own grave and pulled V with her. About a year after everything went down, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Lex, of course. Ray, I know we haven't spoken, but I'm in a really tight spot, she began, not even asking how I was doing. I've been staying with my sister, but she's selling her house and I need somewhere to go. I was hoping maybe I could borrow some money. I cut her off. Not happening, Lex. Ray, please. She sounded desperate. I have nothing. Dom didn't give me a dime in the breakup. No alimony, no support, nothing. Funny how that works, I said. You leave your husband of 20 years for a rich guy, don't bother with any legal protection, and then get surprised when he tosses you aside? I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Is that what you call spitting in my face and calling me a loser? Taking our daughter and poisoning her against me? Those aren't mistakes, Lex. Those are choices. She started crying, but it didn't move me. I'd cried enough tears over her. Have you talked to V? I asked, curious despite myself. No, she admitted. She won't return my calls. Last I heard she was waiting tables somewhere. God, what a mess. A mess you created, I reminded her. Have a good one, Lex. I hung up. I learned later from a mutual friend that Lex ended up working at Macy's in Phoenix, sharing an apartment with two other women in their 50s, who were also divorced. Dom moved on from the model too. Apparently he's on wife number 4 now, some 21-year-old yoga instructor. That guy will never change. Life went on. Jen and I got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse about 2 years after all this went down. Sometimes I'd think about V and wonder how she was doing. Pride kept me from reaching out, even as the anger slowly faded. Then one day, I was at the grocery store and literally bumped carts with her in the produce section. Dad, she said, looking startled. She'd lost weight and the designer clothes were gone, replaced with simple jeans and a plain sweater. I nodded, unsure what to say. An awkward silence hung between us. Finally, she spoke. I've wanted to call you 1,000 times, she said quietly, to apologize again. But after you turned me away that night, I figured you were done with me for good. And I couldn't blame you. I shrugged. You made your choices. I did, she agreed. And then I had to live with the consequences. Without any help. There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement of fact. I noticed she had a textbook peeking out of her bag. You're in school? She nodded. Community college. Getting my associate's degree in marketing. I work at Miller's Diner to pay for it. Honest work, I said, and meant it. Then I just stood there with my shopping cart, caught between the anger I'd nursed for so long and this unexpected pull to reconnect, and walked away past her, remembering how ashamed she was of me. Sometimes I think about how different things might have been if I hadn't lost my job all those years ago. But then I realized that didn't cause what happened. It just revealed who people truly were. Lex would have left eventually for someone with more money or status. V needed to learn some hard lessons. And me? I needed to learn that my worth isn't tied to my income or job title. That sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way to find out who you really are. And sometimes karma does its job perfectly too. Well, that's my story, Reddit. Took way longer to type out than I expected, but it was kind of therapeutic to put it all down. For those going through something similar, it gets better. But sometimes you gotta let people hit rock bottom before they can climb back up. And sometimes you gotta hit rock bottom yourself to figure out who's worth keeping in your life.